Okay, wow. You sent us a ton of stuff on AI. Articles, videos, even some like philosophical discussions.
Yeah.
Clearly, this topic is really on your mind. And I get it, everyone's going on and on about AI like it's the answer to everything.
hmm
But I feel like you're kind of starting to wonder if maybe it's more hype than reality.
Yeah, you're definitely picking up on a vibe that's out there. It really is fascinating how quickly AI, especially those large language models like ChatGPT, have just grabbed everybody's attention. But the question is, are we mistaking that fast adoption for actual progress? That's what we need to kind of unpack here.
Okay, so let's unpack it. One of the articles compares this, like fervor around AI, to a kind of religious fantasy.
Mm.
It makes this point that maybe like our obsession with endless economic growth is pushing us to believe in technology as the solution,
Right.
even when the problems might not have technological solutions.
That's a really interesting comparison. The article is suggesting we've kind of created this economic system, it calls it a superorganism, that is completely dependent on constant growth. And as we kind of bump up against the limits of a finite planet, well, AI is being presented as that magical solution, like, transcending those limits,
Yeah.
almost like a technological Hail Mary pass.
Right. It's like we can't handle the thought that maybe there are just some things that we can't solve with an algorithm. So we just keep pouring billions of dollars into AI, hoping it'll magically create more resources, reverse climate change, and keep the whole economic engine running forever.
Yeah, it's a seductive story, and it ties into this what Daniel Schmachtenberger calls the naive progress narrative. We get so focused on the shiny new toys, the longer lifespans, the technological marvels that we just don't look at the cost of those. Like, what are the environmental and social costs?
I think that's a great point, and it's something that I saw come up in several sources. Like the pretty picture of progress always kind of leaves out the people who get left behind.
hmm
Or, even worse, people that are actually hurt by the unintended consequences of technology.
Exactly. And those consequences are just they're getting bigger, harder to ignore. Climate change, all the resources we're using up, the disruptions in society, all of that's, at least in part tied back to our wanting more and more technological progress without thinking about the downsides.
So are we saying then that progress is bad? I mean, surely there are some technological advancements that have made the world a better place, right?
Of course, of course. I think the point is not to like reject technology altogether,
Right.
but to be more thoughtful about it.
hmm
Schmachtenberger would say we have to move beyond just intelligence, which he defines as just being able to achieve goals, to cultivate wisdom,
Hmm.
really understanding the long-term holistic consequences of our actions.
Yeah, and he talks about this idea of Chesterton's fence, which I thought was fascinating.
Yeah.
It's basically a warning, a cautionary tale against tearing down traditional systems or safeguards without understanding why they were there in the first place.
Yeah, it's a really good reminder that sometimes what looks like progress is actually removing something, a restraint that was serving a purpose.
Oh, interesting.
You can think about like the Sabbath, for example, in this world that we live in, where we're like go go go, always on. A day of rest almost seems counterintuitive, right?
Yeah.
But you could see it as this really like important restraint for society. A way to push back against this obsession we have with constantly achieving.
I see, yeah. So how does Chesterton's fence apply to AI then?
hmm
Are we rushing into this AI future without the right safeguards? Are we tearing down fences without really understanding what they were protecting us from?
I think that's the question we have to be asking. And
Yeah.
Schmachtenberg is coming at this from a more philosophical perspective. We also have computer scientists like Arvind Narayan and Sayash Kapoor who are calling out what they call AI snake oil in one of the videos you sent.
AI snake oil. So they're saying like a lot of what we're being told about AI's capabilities, it's just hype.
Yeah, exactly. Their argument is that a lot of these AI systems are being sold as something revolutionary when really they're just like glorified spreadsheets.
Mm.
Or even worse, they're facades that are hiding human labor behind this thin layer of artificial intelligence.
See, that's kind of disturbing to me because then it means that decisions that have a big impact on our lives, who gets a job, who gets a loan, even what we see online, all of those things are being made by systems that aren't nearly as smart, as sophisticated as we're led to believe.
Right. And it feeds into this idea that technology, and AI specifically, can be this substitute for human judgment, Like, we don't need to think critically or ethically because AI will do it for us.
Right, right. And that's a dangerous, dangerous path to go down.
Yeah, I think so.
Especially when you start to look at the conversation around AGI, artificial general intelligence.
Yeah.
Now, that's where things get, like, really sci-fi, right? Machines surpassing human intelligence and maybe even becoming a threat to us.
Yeah.
We've got AI leaders out there practically begging for regulation, claiming that their creations could, like, destroy us all.
Yeah, it's a pretty dramatic narrative, and it's definitely getting attention. But Narayan and Kapoor would say that we're still a long way off from that.
Okay.
They point out that the AI models that we have now, they're built on technology that's like decades old, and the advancements, while they are happening, they're happening much more gradually than all the hype suggests.
So all this talk about AI being like this imminent threat, it's overblown.
It's definitely more nuanced than some of the headlines would have you believe. That's why I think it's so important right now to have this sense of skepticism in a world that is so saturated with AI hype.
Don't just accept what tech leaders in the media are saying.
Yeah.
Do your own research, ask questions, and most importantly, trust. Trust yourself. Trust your judgment.
Yeah, you don't have to have a PhD in computer science to understand how AI might affect your life or society.
Right.
It's about, staying informed, thinking critically, and being willing to push back against the main narrative, what everyone else is saying.
So connecting that back to the religious fantasy idea, are we saying that we're kind of projecting our hopes and our fears onto AI, that we're giving it like these supernatural powers that it doesn't actually have?
That's an interesting point. This idea that AI is the savior, that it's going to solve all our problems. You can definitely see that as this modern myth.
Mhm.
A way for us to avoid dealing with the limitations of the systems that we've built and the hard choices that we have to make.
So like a technological messiah that will deliver us from the consequences of our actions.
Yeah, exactly. But, the reality is technology, even AI, is a tool. And just like any tool, it can be used for good or bad. The key is to use it wisely, to understand how it could affect our lives and the world.
Oh, this is some deep stuff. We've covered a lot, and I think we need a moment to process it all. We'll be right back to continue this deep dive, so stay with us.
And what happens if, this whole AI project just turns out to be this huge waste of money?
Yeah.
What if the promises of AGI fizzle out, the economic benefits we're expecting, they never show up?
That's a question that's kind of been like in the back of my mind this whole time. It's such a huge investment, not even just financially,
Mm-hmm.
but also like emotionally, this idea that AI is going to be the answer. What if it all just flops?
Well, some of the things you sent over actually suggest that kind of failure might be good for us in the long run.
Really?
Well, think of it this way. We're putting all this energy and all these resources into AI,
Yeah.
hoping it'll solve all our problems. If it doesn't, well, maybe that's like the ultimate reality check.
Like a wake-up call for humanity.
Exactly. It might force us to actually look at the limits of this naive progress narrative. Like, really admit that technology isn't going to solve our deepest problems. We might be forced to look inward, towards solutions that are more about our values,
Yeah.
how we behave, how we relate to each other and the planet.
So instead of looking to AI to create like this perfect world, this utopia, we might actually start focusing on the things that really matter.
Yep.
Like creating a more just and equitable society, figuring out how to live sustainably,
Right.
finding a deeper sense of meaning and purpose in our lives.
Yeah, exactly. It's about shifting our focus from those external fixes to internal transformations. Schmachtenberger talks about this. He says we need to cultivate wisdom alongside intelligence, become more aware of the long-term effects of what we do, both individually and as a society.
He also brings up Chesterton's sense, right?
Yes.
That idea that we shouldn't just tear down traditional systems or safeguards without understanding why they were put there.
Yeah.
So maybe some of those old-fashioned values and practices, they actually have something to offer in our super technological world.
That's a really interesting point. We tend to think about progress as just this straight line, always moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe there is some wisdom in looking back, understanding why certain traditions, certain practices have lasted so long. Maybe it's about finding that balance between innovating and preserving what we have.
So how do we cultivate that wisdom? Is it something we can, like reading a book, can we download it onto a chip?
I don't think so. I think it requires a different kind of education, one that focuses on critical thinking, ethical reasoning, and empathy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it requires a willingness to slow down, take time to reflect, to question what we believe about what progress really is.
It's a big shift from how we operate now,
Yeah.
right? Where it's all about speed and efficiency and instant gratification.
Right, it is, yeah. But, a lot of what you shared suggests that this kind of shift is really important if we want a future that's actually sustainable and fulfilling.
So are you saying that we should all like go live in a commune and give up technology?
No, not necessarily. I don't think it's about rejecting technology completely. It's about, using it wisely, thoughtfully, in a way that lines up with our values.
Yeah.
And understanding that technology is a tool. It's not, this magic wand. It can make our lives better, but it can also distract us, deceive us, and even manipulate us.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm also wondering if, some of the sources brought this up, if all this focus on AI, if it's actually a distraction,
Yeah,
like from the real work we need to be doing.
that's a good question. Are we so focused on AI, putting so much into it that we're neglecting the stuff that's even more urgent?
Yeah.
Like climate change, social inequality, all political division.
It's like we're so busy building the next gadget that we're forgetting to take care of the foundations, the things that make a society healthy and the planet healthy.
And if AI doesn't deliver on its promises, it might force us to face that, to actually deal with those uncomfortable truths that maybe we've been avoiding.
So, what does this all mean for the average person,
Hmm.
just trying to navigate this world that just keeps getting more complex?
I think it means we have to be really careful about the information we take in, especially when it comes to technology.
Yeah.
Don't buy into the hype. Ask questions. Do your own research. And probably most importantly, trust your gut.
Yeah, like if something feels off and if something sounds too good to be true about AI, it probably is.
Right. It's about remembering that technology is a tool, not a, magic solution. It can help us, but it can also, mislead us,
Yeah.
even control us.
It seems like the message here is we need to be more skeptical,
Yeah.
more thoughtful, more intentional about how we use technology.
I think that's a good summary. It's not about, being against technology, but about using it wisely, using it in a way that fits with what we believe in and helps create a better future for everyone.
That's a great point to think about as we go into the last part of this deep dive. We'll be back with some final thoughts and takeaways in just a bit. Okay, so we're back. And wow, that was quite a deep dive into AI and all the hype surrounding it. My head's spinning a little bit, I gotta say.
It's a lot to process, for
Hmm.
sure. The speed of AI development, all the promises, all the anxieties. Yeah, it's easy to feel overwhelmed.
Yeah, one thing that really stuck with me is this idea of skepticism as like a superpower.
Yeah.
It seems like the more AI hype we're bombarded with, the more important it is to like really question everything, not just take it at face value.
Absolutely. Narayanan and Kapoor really hammered that point home in that video, calling it fighting AI snake oil.
Yeah,
It's about developing a healthy distrust, especially when it comes to these huge claims about what AI can do.
right, right. It's almost like we need to be like critical consumers of AI, just like we are with anything else we buy, right?
Yeah.
Like I wouldn't buy a car without doing some research, reading reviews. So why should we just blindly accept everything we're told about AI?
Exactly. It's about being informed, understanding the potential downsides, not just the upsides, and asking those tough questions, like who actually benefits from this technology? Who might get hurt? What are the long-term consequences?
Another thing that kept coming up was this link between like AI hype and our anxieties about limits to growth.
Yeah.
It's almost like we're like clinging to this belief that technology and AI specifically can somehow save us from ourselves.
That is a really interesting point. The sources we've looked at seem to suggest that this belief in AI as like a savior, it's kind of like a modern myth. It allows us to avoid facing some really uncomfortable truths about how our economy works, our consumption habits, our impact on the planet.
It's definitely easier to believe in some technological fix, than to make those really hard choices that real sustainability would require. Like,
Yeah.
changing how we live, consuming less, prioritizing the planet over just endless economic growth.
It's like we've created this technological religion almost,
Yeah.
where AI is the god, the algorithm is the holy text, and these tech CEOs are like the prophets.
And like any religion, it takes a certain amount of faith, right?
Had it.
Like a willingness to just accept things on authority without really questioning them.
Exactly. But blind faith in technology or blind faith in anything, really, it can be dangerous. It can lead us down a path where we make choices that actually hurt us and hurt the planet.
So what's the antidote to that? If skepticism is the superpower, what are the other tools we need to navigate this AI-powered world?
Well, I think critical thinking is crucial.
Yeah.
Being able to analyze information, spot biases, evaluate different arguments.
Right.
It's also about developing this sense of ethics, being able to tell right from wrong, thinking about how what we do affects other people.
And maybe a dose of humility wouldn't hurt either. Admitting we don't have all the answers, that technology isn't always the solution, and that there are things we just can't control.
Yeah, that's a crucial point. And going back to the sources, they seem to suggest that maybe, just maybe, this whole AI bubble is going to burst.
Hmm.
The promises of AGI don't quite materialize, the economic benefits don't pan out, and the whole project turns out to be this huge waste of time, money, and energy.
And if that happens, what then? What do we do when the technological messiah doesn't show up?
I think that could actually be a really powerful turning point for humanity. A moment where we're forced to step back and reevaluate what's important, question what we think progress means, and start looking for answers in new places.
Maybe we'll finally be ready to focus on those deeper, more meaningful parts of life that we've been neglecting,
Yeah.
like our relationships, our communities, our connection to nature, cultivating wisdom and compassion and empathy.
It could be the push we need to realize that true progress isn't about building fancier machines, but about becoming better people.
So if AI is a mirror, like some of these sources say, what do we want to see looking back at us?
That's the question we all have to ask ourselves. Do we want to see a world where technology is in control, algorithms running everything? Or do we want a world where technology helps us reach our full potential, create a fairer and more sustainable society, and cultivate a deeper sense of connection and purpose?
Those are big questions, and I don't think they have easy answers. But the fact that we're even asking them, that's progress in itself. It means we're starting to think critically about the role of AI in our lives and in our future.
And that's exactly what this deep dive was all about. So thanks for joining us on this exploration. We hope it's given you some things to think about, some tools to navigate this increasingly complex world of AI.
And remember, skepticism is your superpower. Use it wisely.